I see there's some people in the chat now. Hello, hello, good evening. We'll start a few minutes from now, maybe 10:03, just to see if anyone else would like to drop by. Thank you for being here already. I'm so excited. And I'm just gonna check real quick, hoping I haven't already scuffed anything. Hang on. Hello, hello, Shun. Yes, it's time. It's time for me to not shut up and probably talk way too much for the evening. Hello. Good evening or morning to anyone who's from the west side of the world right now. I hear it's like kind of early there, but so like if you're from Europe or America, thank you so much for dropping by, because this is not quite the ideal time for you guys. Also, yay, I'm so glad my chat works. I was actually supposed to show this like chat widget, like since I had like a Grand Blue Fantasy stream plan, but that fell through, so you guys are seeing this for the first time. Hopefully it doesn't break in the other layout either. Hang on. Yeah, that's right. It's the Great Invasion's anniversary today, as well as important cultural property designation day for Nico, Sanchomo, and I think Kumo-kun, Murakumo. So lots of things happening today. Also like Junichi Sawabi's birthday, so much is going on today, and I decided to like do it now. So I'm just adding to the chaos, really. Today is loaded. Damn right it is. So like yeah, as my ticker up top says, I hope you guys have done your business, had something to eat or drink, especially like grabbing a drink, because you know how my streams get, they take kind of a while. Why are you so insistent on like another birthday? Like, we don't do that here. No, I'm kidding. Wait, I almost forgot to bring up my notes. I got a little bit of notes, so while I am not doing the scripted, I do have a little guide for me of like points to tackle, just so I don't go too off track and start crying on stream because I love spears too much. What's that face for? Got me some newts. Oh my god. Mira, are you here? Are you in the chat? Like, that is so nice of you to like say I'm doing something fun and educational, cause fun, yes. Educational, kind of debatable. 10:03, should I start now or... Actually wait, one last check to see if I haven't forgotten something crucial. Let's see. Okay, I think we're good to go. I hope we are. Wait, let me just exit some of my other processes so that my poor little laptop has less to think about. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. Once again, good evening, everyone. This is the creature that's neither here nor there, Kh'nvinien, back at it again with another stream. Oops, where is my... Hello, where am I? Hello? I can't see myself. There we go. It is I. Shichiseiken and Hakusan objectification days too. Oh, hi Kaze. Good morning, good morning. Wait, really? Like, today is Hakusan's as well? I didn't actually know that. That is amazing. So much is happening. Handsome. You aren't tired of my face yet? Anyway, so, as the card says, we're talking about spears today. And it's brought to you by me, someone who went by Yarisexual at some point, and then Yariyume because apparently Yarisexual was getting censored in some Discord servers. Then now I'm Kh'nvinien. We'll be discussing this in chronological order or swordbook order because I ran a poll and you guys seem to want that best, which is great because I don't know, like it's cool that you guys gave me your feedback, but that also means we're starting with Tonbukiri, which might be a problem. Tsurugide, right. Our first little boy. Okay, so some quick reminders. I highly encourage chat participation, whether it's asking questions or sharing your own opinions or little bits of info. I love to learn from you guys as well, and I want you guys to learn from each other as well. And like, I'm so glad you guys are already here and chatting, so I really appreciate it. If someone asks a question in chat and I happen to miss it, let me know, or you can like answer it yourself if you're confident enough in your thoughts. And I know you guys are very smart and very cool as well, so go at it. And please keep the chat family friendly. Like, as much as I like my own nasty commentary here and there, I don't wanna get in trouble. Let's keep it on Twitter or elsewhere. So, where to go back? Okay, so first we are talking about the Yari terminologies. So, I'm discussing this because Token Ranbo is known as... Oh, hello! Watching this while farming UTC, I hope I'm able to keep you company while you're doing the grind. I haven't done my grind much. Okay, so I'm bringing this up first because Token Ranbo is known as like the Sword Boys game, right? So even if it's like meant as a joke, some people will definitely think, if it's about swords, then how come there's also like Naginata and like spears? Well, it's a fair question actually. So here, a yari is defined as basically a spear that's made with the traditional Japanese swordsmithing techniques and materials. So that's using tamahagane or like star steel, sorted into soft and hard steel, which they will then fold together to make the edge and the backing. Just so, this basically makes it so that the spine is a lot softer, while softer in the sense that it wouldn't shatter from too much impact, and then like the edge is the hard one that keeps its edge, like its sharpness, better. So weapons with these techniques are called nihonto, with the to character meant to refer more simply to blades rather than the hard definition of swords. So it's a bit more of a loose kind of definition. You forgot the UTC, it's okay, you've still got a lot of time. So if nihonto is meant to say more of Japanese blades than Japanese swords, then it just serves to make sense that Naginata and Yari are considered to be part of the Token Ranbu franchise as Token Danshi, especially with like the Naginata in question, because the Naginata often also get converted into wakizashi. Well, not converted, more like remounted. Some of them don't really get reshaped, some of them just like get different clothes in a way. Blade is blade. That's right. Oh man, my tentacles getting in the way. I did not account for that, but thankfully most of my slides have the pictures on that side rather than text, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So yeah, the first thing I would like to say is, yes, Yari and Naginata do in fact count as sword boys, which, let's just be honest, like, even if it would be more correct to say it's blade boys, that just doesn't sound as nice as sword boys, right? So, and well, they're kind of the minority anyway, so there's that. Moving on. We are starting with Tonbokiri, the first one in the sword book at number 65 of the Muramasa school. He is drawn by Minamoto Satoru and voiced by Sakurai Toru, who also voices Dotanuki and Yamabushi. So, if you guys remember that one scene in Hanamaru where all three are talking while working out, that's kind of a funny little Seiyu joke because that was just the same guy talking to himself. He is 198 centimeters, which I think at this point he would still be considered the third tallest, because I think Nen is like taller than both Iwatoshi and Tonbokiri at this point. I haven't brushed up on my heights in a long time. And his estimated first date was in the 1500s by Fujiwara Masazane, which off the top of my head is a second generation Muramasa blacksmith. So he's not like, if anyone came and was forged to be by the original blacksmith, they would be considered Tonbokiri's older brother, which, if Sengo is meant to be basically any Muramasa sword, he technically that means Tonbokiri is the responsible younger brother, and he's just constantly running after Sengo, trying to strip everywhere. God, I manifested that scene for Sakurai Toru. Right? It's so good. I love Seiyu jokes like that. I'm correct? Nene is the tallest. Yeah. How tall is Nene at this point? Like, I think Iwatoshi is like 200 or 201. Could you like please share with the class how tall Nene is? Oh, okay. Oh no, it's fine. Something like, for some reason my slides are loading weirdly, so I hope that doesn't translate poorly on the stream. Anyway, for some reason the header is missing. I must have removed it by accident, but we're moving on to me describing a little bit about the actual weapon itself in real life, and telling you about how it got its name. So, for Tonbokiri, it's literally translated as Dragonfly Cutter, referring to how in between battles, Honda Tadakatsu had the spear propped up while resting. Then came a dragonfly attempting to perch on top of the blade, only to be split in half. This alludes to the blade being extremely sharp. So, like, the thing with weapons is you need motion for them to cut, right? So, with scissors, you make that snipping motion. With swords, you swing them, you stab them in order to pierce something or cut something. So, the idea that this story comes from the fact that Tonbokiri was apparently so sharp that it managed to cut a dragonfly just from the movement of it landing on the tip is crazy. Saniwas look like a midget when Spear Boys stand and look at us. For real. Nen is 205 and Iwa is 203 or something like that. 6'8" and 6'7". That's terrifying. So, this sharpness is both terrifying and mythical, but also kind of par for the course for Muramasa blades, which are said to be wickedly sharp to the point that they're considered cursed. That's why we have all the hubbub with Sengo being strange and taunting people about touching him and the like. But as Tonba says, you don't have to worry about him. He's fine. He's harmless, really. Next. Oh dear. Where is my header? Why is my header gone? That's not right. There should be like a white header here saying like what topic and which sword we're at, but it seems to have disappeared in this presentation. That kind of stinks. So, moving on. The spearhead is noted to be rather small and thin, causing some discussion in regards to whether this was actually meant as a display piece rather than practical use, much less a weapon for war. I never knew the curse came from how sharp they are. That is, yeah, like there's a story about well, There's this story about the rivalry between Muramasa and Masamune, where they basically competed to make the best weapons. And what happened was Muramasa's was so sharp it cut even leaves that are floating in the river, if I remember the story correctly. But basically, it was so wickedly sharp it didn't discriminate on what to cut. So a passing monk said that Masamune was a better smith because its sword knew what to cut and what not to cut, something of the sort. Okay, so I wish I was able to get side views of Tombo's spear. Like there were some exhibit photos shared by people who were fortunate enough to go to it in recent years, but it's very thin and delicate apart from being quite short. I think the spear itself is around roughly 40 centimeters long, which I'll show a comparison photo later, by the way, for the Sanmeiso, because it's gonna be really funny. So so the size compared with like the delicate carvings on him are it. There's a problem when you're into Token Rambo. You keep referring to weapons as he or they instead of like, an object. So it begs the question of like, was it really meant to be used in war the way Honda Tatakatsu used it, or was it just meant to be more of a display piece? In any case, if it was meant to be an art piece, then it's a testament to how well forged it was, considering it was able to last through so many battles that Tadakatsu used it on. Because Tadakatsu's battle record is 55 battles, I think, so we could safely assume he probably brought Tonbo with him on all of those. And it's fine. Like, it's still in pristine condition. If I remember correctly, the Tokugawa clan got terrified of the Muramasa blades because it injured Ieyasu. Yes, that's right. Not just Ieyasu himself, but also his father and grandfather. Like, it's... From what I know, like, some assassination attempts were done in regards to that. For some reason, people who tried to assassinate them always somehow used Muramasa blades. And then one time, I think it was his father that it was said he was trying to inspect one, but he accidentally dropped it and like cut his hand on it. So like they were like, oh no, this is so bad, we should get rid of all of these, which is a contributing factor to why there's not a lot of existing Muramasa blades, or at least ones that are confirmed to be made by him, because a lot of them were broken by Tokugawa's orders, or in the later years in the Edo period, people would change the signatures on these Muramasa blades to say something else. Like, it could say Muramune or even Masamune, just so that people would actually be interested in selling them and like selling those weapons, which is kind of sad. And I kind of hope they tackle that in Token Ranbu, honestly. Mihotose. Yeah. So, moving on from that fact. Oh, by the way, Mihotose, watch it if you haven't already. I mean, if you're willing to try a musical, but it's great fodder for like characterization of both Sengo and Tonbo. And Monoyoshi and Kurikara. Well, it's good. Like, the Dad Simulator musical is good if you can like put up with it. That's kind of sad. Yeah. I suspect that the rack of Rio base has more to do with the use than anything. Honestly, yeah. So, moving on. In contrast to the spearhead size, which as I mentioned before was around maybe 45 centimeters at best, its longest recorded mounting pole is said to be at 6 meters long, and the average was around 4.5. Honda Tadakatsu changed the mountings out often to suit his needs in the situation, and when he got older, and of course as you get older, it becomes more difficult to carry heavier things, and he still didn't want to let go of using Tonbokiri, so he just opted for a very small shaft of 90 centimeters. Second favorite Tomo, I have to rewatch it every year when I can. Yes. So, like, most of the trouble with wielding spears is the fact that it's less that they're heavy, but more on like the length of them makes the distribution of weight just very cumbersome. So like the fact that Tadakatsu chose to wield it at 6 meters is like very crazy. But it's also like kind of silly because if you think about like a tiny little spearhead on such a long spear shaft, how did he use it at 6 meters? It was mostly on horseback, if I remember correctly. That's why he was like very fond of Mikuni Guro as well, which is horse number 2 in game, in case you didn't know. And then even as he grew old, I wish they said how old he was at the recording of like 90 centimeters pole use for Tonbo. He also mentions this in game actually. I think it's in his Kiwame, where he says like, yeah, as his master grew older, he had to be shortened, but like, it's like that's how it be. Hello. Why my slides scuffing? Do not. There we go. Okay. We're moving on to notable leaders and current whereabouts, which we've kind of started with him because, of course, his most notable owner was Honda Tadakatsu, their name meaning more or less roughly only to win. And in their long career of warmongering, they definitely lived up to that. In fact, they were so good that even the enemy commanders and lords were like giving him praise. It says here that Oda Nobunaga called him a samurai among samurai, and even Toyotomi Hideyoshi had praise for him. Takeda Shingen also praised Honda in saying that the only things above Tokugawa Ieyasu are his helmet and Honda Tadakatsu, which is like kind of like a very humorous thing to say. Which, speaking of helmets, even if Honda's helmet looks very tall and cumbersome to wear, like it looks really heavy, it's actually made with paper mache on the inside, so in reality it's actually quite light. Ricky has a if you like to learn more about it, like you can easily search up Muramasa, Legend of the Muramasa, or Muramasa's Curse, or Muramasa versus Masamune. There's a lot of articles about it, and they're all pretty concise and consistent with one another. So just pick one and go. It's also why I've been really waiting for more Masamune and Token Round, because it's like I want Sengo to have a conversation with it. Like, it doesn't have to be beef, but I want him to talk with the Masamune about what they think about that legend, you know? Let's see anyway, moving on from that, let's see what other exploits of Tadakatsu I have in my notes. Here we go. In the Battle of Hitotozaka with the Takeda army in 1572, in order to lead the retreating battle of the Tokugawa army, Honda Tadakatsu basically stayed back as the rear guard to keep the enemy from getting close to the back. Like, apparently he did this on his own, and apparently the Takeda army were quite intimidated of this, and the Tokugawa army managed to actually like retreat farther enough to like recoup. The details of this are vague, but I've seen this like mentioned in so many sources, so it's like kind of nuts. Same energy as Hijikata getting recorded as being handsome. So, where is he? He's also known to have had a showdown with oh man, I can't remember their name, but the guy who wielded Jirotachi in the Battle of Anegawa. That's also why you would see old fan art of Tonbo with Taro and Jiro, because they do in fact have history together in that one battle. I think they said that that Honda actually beat that other person who wielded Jirotachi. So, was it Jiro or Taro? I can't remember. It's so hazy. But yeah. And Tadakatsu is often referred to as the warrior who surpassed death itself, as he never once suffered a significant wound despite having fought over 55 battles. 55 battles, yeah, there we go. And from I remember, in one of the... I can't remember what battle it was, but of course at some point, Mikuniguro was shot down by arrows in a fight, and Tadakatsu fell off the horse, but he was completely unharmed even then, which like if he was shot down in a charge, you would expect him to like it would be unsurprising if he got hurt in that, but he did not. He just ended up standing up, looking at Mikuniguro and offering it a silent prayer before he takes another soldier's horse and just charges on some more. If my opponent was Sadakatsu, I would run too. Then I would run from all of them. It's a smart move considering these guys have spent years fighting, even if it's just a few short years. Like, you know, they know what they're doing, we don't. So, despite him having surpassed death in all these battles and his conquest, helping Tokugawa unify Japan, he died in Edo in 1610. And the interesting thing about this is the accounts say he willed himself to die after 5 years prior he cut his hand while wood carving, and like he saw his hand bleed and he was like thinking, well, if I'm bleeding, I suppose it's time for me to go too. So he just kind of like slowly accepted that he was at the end of his time, especially since there was no more wars to be fought and all, which in a way is kind of melancholic, which at least he didn't die from sickness, because a lot of like these warlords actually die from sickness, such as like alcohol poisoning, liver poisoning, tuberculosis, and the like. But like to choose to die is, man, what a guy. Makara no Otaka and Makara Takamatsu. Yeah, those are the Makara brothers. That's right. Thank you so much, Kaze. I'm so glad you're here. You are filling in the gaps in my memory because I did not script this, even though I should. So, right. That's crazy. Like, that's not something that a lot of people can say even today. So, you really gotta respect the guy. And that's pretty much it. So for the guy himself, after he died, Tonbokiri continued to be passed down in the Honda clan, and at present is currently under private collection. I actually found an article which name drops who owns him, but because I only ever found it from that one article, I kind of chose not to, because you know, these guys like their privacy. So just because one article said it, which while they might be wrong, in case they're right, I would like to respect their privacy, especially since this is kind of like a security risk. People would probably want to steal Tonbokiri, let's be honest here. I have the power of God and Miki on my side. Yes, that's good. I don't have a second screen, so I can't just cheat while I'm streaming. So the original is occasionally put on exhibit, as well as 3 replicas regularly available for viewing. So, a cool thing about Tokenranbu's impact is I found an article that basically said before 2015, when Tokenranbu launched, the last time that Tonbokiri was seen in an exhibit was 11 years from then. So that's 2004 was the last time he was seen before Tokenranbu showed up and popularized the spears and like got girls, younger women interested in it. Like I think the same goes for actually a lot of swords in the franchise, but like this was the one I could really find a concrete number on how long it was between the gaps. I mean, even now it's kind of sporadic. I think he's only exhibited every other year or so. For IRL affairs would be such a good study, right? Like it's so well documented in interviews with like museum curators and like just townsfolk, because if you walk around, like you're likely gonna come across people who have heard of the franchise. Don't tempt me. Tempt you about what? So since I mentioned the replicas, I managed to pick out 2 to show on stream, just to, because I will go back to the other, but this one, this scan is of the original authentic spearhead, but there are many replicas, because if you're able to replicate it, it's a show of skill. But actually like the big final test for people who say they specialize in spears is actually Nihongo, but we'll get to him later. I will show you. Okay, there's this one, which, as you can see, is actually like a very, very close replica of it. It just has like additional Vajra shaped weights, bronze weights on the bottom. Well, half of them Vajra anyway. About the Sun Chomo coming. Yes, everyone, like that thing about Sun Chomo really like helped me fall in love with the sword, and like there's so much sentiment to it. Can I share the article of the significance of Tokanrambu and sword pilgrimages for here to read? Yeah, please do. Like, reading material is good, especially if, I mean, like, you know, like we all like swords and spears, and it's like just a good way to appreciate what the franchise is about from an outsider's perspective as well. And here is the second replica. There we go. This one, if you can notice, the shape is not, I wouldn't say off, it's just a little more, it's a little different. Like the thick part is way up top and it's made out of, I think this is copper. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the attached names of the smiths who made these replicas, but it's pretty cool. Like, you can definitely recognize it as Tonbokiri, even if there is also some like significant differences between this and the original. My master's into being done so I can work on my PhD and also will my Japanese abilities to being good. At least you have, you know, you have relevant skills. All I do is Google and scream all day on the internet. So anyway, yes, Shun, do go on and share that link in the chat if you are able to find it. Replicas be Tonbo's outfits. Yeah, actually, I've seen people. I think I retweeted it like a few weeks back. Someone made an altar design of Tonbo based off a replica. I should go find it again, but it was like, that's definitely a concept that's great to be played with. And let's move on to Tonbokiri's depiction in canon and fanon. On the battlefield, he embodies Honda Takatsu's warrior spirit, surging forward and not allowing any enemy to get past him. However, in the citadel and towards other sword in the Saniwa, he is kind and gentle, coming off as almost motherly, which he just has a huge gap moe. Oh no, what comment didn't show up? YouTube, stop eating comments. Don't be mean. So like I remember when I first started playing Tokanranbu, the reason I liked Otagini more was because at first glance Tonbo definitely just looked like he was like just gonna be he's just stern warrior, which is cool and all. He's got his boobs out. But then I found out, oh, if he's in the citadel, he's really soft spoken and kind and sweet. Oh no. The pilgrimage handle. Oh, thank you. Of the pilgrimage handle, you mean the one that Shun is talking about? Or I think I'm a little lost right now. Oh no. And anyway, about Tonbokiri's gap moe of being motherly, it's, believe it or not, it's not actually just like something that the devs were like, oh, let's just put it in because it'll be cute. I believe it has something to do with the carvings that was on the spear itself, because those carvings, let's bring up one of the replicas here. Actually, this one looks better. The carvings you see here are actually Buddhist they're Buddhist symbolisms, which if once you learn of what they mean, it and like relate it to how Tonbokiri is characterized, you're like just that makes sense. Which that's actually what my next slides will be. We're gonna talk about these top 3 bonji, or like Sanskrit characters. These represent like 3 different deities in Buddhism, which Tonbo kind of embodies himself as well. It's like, I remember when I first learned about this, it was like the spiral of me falling deeply in love with Token Rambo because it was such a genius way of implementing that design into things that are also characterized, like in like character design, like not just in visuals, but also in writing. Let's move on so I can stop just going in circles. There we go. The very top bonji is for the Jizo Bosatsu, who is closely related to children and travelers and is said to ease the suffering of those in hell and postpone their Buddhahood until all hells are empty. By the way, these explanations, I just took these from my old Twitter thread. Like I just kind of quickly cross-checked them to see if they still hold up, which they do, but it's also very watered down and simplified, so there's a lot of nuances that I will be missing out on, which if you're interested, I highly recommend you look them up when you have your free time, because this is just like, I'm only bringing up the contextual parts that are the most relevant to Tonbo's character. So, ease the suffering of those in hell and postpone their Buddhahood until all hells are empty. It's his usual servitude stuff. Like, he's also like often depicted by people to be kind to the younger quote-unquote looking swords. He's just very kind and helpful, and he is always charging forward to keep everyone else safe as much as he can. Next is the second one, which represents Amida Nyorai, known as the Buddha of infinite light and life, as well as another savior figure, promising rebirth into the Pure Land to anyone who chanted the prayers associated with them. So, by the way, like the visuals I have is a PNG, like a digital rendering, the carving on the spear, and how it's drawn on him as tattoos. And the third is for Canon or Kanjion Bosatsu, depending on which source you ask. Depicted as either gender, they are known as an embodiment for compassion and mercy, listening to the prayers and cries of the living and assisting them in their salvation. So those three characters really just embody a lot of like servitude for others, helping each other out, and like even like feminine in a way qualities. So, you know, that checks out. My god. Is the same Jizo Bosatsu that Jizo Kuhiro invokes in Kasen? Yes, it's the same one actually. I heard a boop. I got distracted. Let me just check. YouTube, please stop eating comments. We're trying to have friendly discussion here. But yes. So that's the 3 top characters on his spear. Then bring this back up. The long bit, like that long kind of sword-like thing. Well, actually, it is a sword. It's called the Sankoken, and it represents Fudo, which is he is part of the, oh no, I forgot the term, 5 heavenly kings, or 5 kings of wisdom, and he is the principal one who channels wrath into compassion, having pledged to serve all beings in pursuit of truth. In his right hand, he holds the Sankoken. If the Kensaku, which is, I should have put up a picture of Fudo, but Fudo in one hand holds the sword, and in the left hand he holds like rope. He uses it to bind people. So here, if the Kensaku should fail to restrain men's harmful passions, Fudo can cut their earthly attachments using the sword. Thus, the Ken is a means by which Fudo pierces through delusions and subdues evil. For this reason, this sword is also called the Chiken, or Sword of Wisdom. So, and then, is it visible? You can't see it here, but at the very base of his spear, there is a stylized sacred lotus, which, if you guys have seen any illustrations of a Buddha, or of like a Buddhist deity, they're often sitting in a lotus. So like that's just, you know, like a very common motif in the belief. It is their seat. So considering that all the things that are carved above it represent Buddhist deities, it just it makes perfect sense to give them a seat to start from. I couldn't, unfortunately, there's a bit more characters at the bottom in between the Sankotsuka Ken and the Lotus, but I could never really find interpretations of what those are supposed to mean. Mostly probably because they're also very small. But yeah, overall, Tonbokiri's protective and motherly nature actually is reflected on the spear itself. So the fact that the writers were able to interpret that into something more than just, oh, let's give him a tattoo, whatever. Like, if they just made Tonbokiri like an uptight vassal type, then it would have worked. It would still be quote unquote historically accurate, but adding this dimension always helps the writing, right? Especially considering his imposing look. He's like really big and like masculine, but then he's also basically a mom. So I think that's more or less it for now on Tonbokiri. Unless I actually have another slide. No, we don't. We're just straight on to Nihongo. So that's one down. We have 4 more to go, which I think should be smooth sailing from here, because the amount of research I did for Tonbo and the rest really sets it apart from the way others portray swords for me. Such an interesting angle to take. Right, because they take all these little details and interpret it in such, I wouldn't like, would it be too much credit to say it's innovative, but I do feel it is, because they really like landed on this formula that no other game has been able to replicate thus far. I know too much and said somehow I know nothing. That's felt. When was the moment you knew you loved Tonbo and he became one of your faves? Funny you should ask me that. So, as I mentioned before, I actually really wanted Otegine first. So when I was starting to play the game, I said to myself, oh, it would be cool if I could get one of each sword type. So at that point, of course, I already had Kasen as my Uchigatana, Aizen as my first Tanto. My first Wakizashi, I think, was Namazuo. I have to check again later. First Tachi was Okurikara. I was from 2015. Okurikara counted as a Tachi back then, before anyone corrects me. Then my first Odachi was Taro Tachi. I didn't have a Naginata or Yari yet, and at the time it was only the choices for Yari were only Otegin and Tonbo, so I just went and forged. I got Tonbo first, so I was like, oh well, I would have preferred Otegin more, but I got what I wanted. I wanted a spear. The janitor looking dude. So I started using him a bunch just to like get the feel of how he played differently from the other characters. I heard more of his voice and read more about him on the wiki, and like, oh no, he's soft and kind. So it was very early on, actually. Like, fun fact is, I got Tonbo on day 2 of my playing of the game. So it's been a ride. It's the guy. So yeah, that's the story of how I fell in love with Tonbo, and I'm still very obsessed with him now. It's the guy who used me to bait into the spear corner. So, for context about what Evie is saying, so we met because we were both in the local Tokenranbu group, but they were more of a Dodanuki liker at the time. Then they started talking to me, and I was like, hey, look at Nihongo. Then I wouldn't shut up about him until Evie started liking them, so here we are. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was love over time. Why would you put it like that? I mean, you're right, but that's way too poetic for me just kind of wailing on the floor over him. Nihongo was my first spear, and I am jealous. And I got it from playing around with the Yari recipe. I didn't realize that he was that rare. No, like, really? I actually saw that first message you sent, Mono. Like, you saying you didn't know he was rare at that time. But man, YouTube, please fix yourself. me wailing and crying until I got Nihon and I went, right. So, same actually. Like, Nihon gave me such a hard time. He debuted in the first War Training expansion, the one with the bamboos and stuff, and one of my only sword mutuals at the time got him on their first run of the map, and I could not get him. I had to wait until he was smithable on the launch of Tokenanbu Pocket. It was terrible. Now you have to check. Oh, do share if you do manage to see which one was your first Yari. Anyway, let's get back to discussing. So, Nihongo, number 136 in the sword book. He is unlisted in any school, at least in game. His art is by Jiro Suzuki, and his voice is Tsuda Kenjiro's, which we all know that voice. He is 195 centimeters, so a little shorter than Tonbo, like about an inch. Pity point. Like, at least the best part about Tokenanbu is one way or another you can get every sword in the game just out of sheer pity. You just have to be patient enough. I see we've got the Tsudaken simps in the chat, which same. And here's the kicker. Despite being called Japan's best, we don't actually know who made him nor his forge date, but it's estimated to be around the Muromachi period, which I can infer is based off his earliest account. So, like, in terms of like his official ownership, that like he'd have to have been made at that point. Actually, like, his whole section is like a lot of ironic. What do you mean you're Japan's best, but we barely know anything about you? Well, not barely, but like it's just a lot of inconsistencies. Here we go. Originally an imperial treasure, it is thought that the spear received its name as Japan's greatest after it was bestowed with a rank of Shosanmi, or senior third rank. The name Nihongo is said to come from this rank or from the time of Toyotomi Hideyoshi's ownership of the spear, which we'll come back to later because there's an associated theory with Hideyoshi's ownership of the spear. And here's a picture of him on the side, like, look at that piece of art. Like, wow. It's like, even the shaft, like this, the haft is, I know this is the original one. It is just as every bit of a work of art as the spearhead itself, which compared to Tonmo being around 44 cm, this Nihongo I think is around 60 cm. So a little bit longer, which well, longer in the sense compared to Tonmo, but he's actually around average size for a spearhead, as far as I checked anyway. Famous for its masterful craftsmanship, it is said that any smith who considers themselves skilled at forging spears will challenge themselves to make a copy of Nihongo at least once in their lives. This requires great skill, as it involves having to replicate the intricate Kurikara dragon carving along the length of the spearhead. The replication at times also sometimes includes the mountings, which are decorated in mother of pearl, which I forgot to mention about Tonbokiri, but he was actually, like, the spear Tonbokiri was also said to have had original mountings decorated with mother of pearl, but it didn't survive the years, and there wasn't any physical illustrated documentation of it, so it's mostly just hearsay at this point, which is pretty sad because I would have loved to see that, honestly. But thanks to Nihongo's shaft being well preserved, we can kind of imagine it might have looked something similar to this. Took me forever to get your first Yari. Otegine was your first. Yay! My boy! The green boy! When I say it was Tonbo and JP and Kine and Inji. Nice! Nice. I love the sharing of spear history. Anyway, moving on before I get distracted. As I mentioned earlier, Nihongo is considered your final test as a spear smithing expert in Japan, because if you look closely, like the profile of that inlay, and then the intricacy of that dragon, which the dragon also represents Fudo. It's referencing this story anecdote where an evil deity challenged Fudo to a fight and they both turned into swords. And at some point in the fight, Fudo turned into a righteous dragon which choked out the other deity. So it's like that's what this is representing. Like conquering evil and the like. Is the fluffy sheath in this game sprite real, and where does it come from? I actually can't confirm if it's like the original one, but there you can find pictures of it on the internet. Like it does in fact exist, but I didn't include it here because I couldn't confirm whether it's original or like a replication of like something that was always historically there. I'll give you an update if ever, or if someone in the chat knows. Sound off. So let's see what we have next. So we're moving on to his notable wielders and current whereabouts. While we don't know who made him or when he was made, he does have quite a long history of very prominent owners. Starting as an imperial treasure, Emperor Ogemachi presented it to Ashikaga Yoshiaki, who then passed it into the hand of Oda Nobunaga, then to Toyotomi Hideyoshi. Hideyoshi then handed it down to Fukushima Masanori, Fukushima Mitsutada's owner, by the way, for his contribution to the conquest of Odawara. It is most famously known in relation to Fukushima Masanori and Mori Taihei. Mori visited Fukushima on New Year's on behalf of his lord Kuroda Nagamasa. However, Fukushima persistently invited him to drink sake with him while he was visiting. So it's like, I think it's worth mentioning, but some articles say that Fukushima was insistent because he really just wanted an excuse to be drinking all the time. So it's like, oh, it's New Year's and you're visiting, so come drink with me. So he basically just peer pressured Mori into like indulging his vices. Not wanting to look rude and disgrace his lord, Mori accepts. It turns into a drinking match where Fukushima tells Mori that if they can drink more cups than him, he will allow Mori to take anything he wants with him. Which, of course, Mori managed to do so. And he chooses Nihongo as his prize and just pieces out and leaves him there. Which, there's an account that he sent a servant after Mori, which like he was like upset that he lost, so he was like trying to take back the spear, so he sent a servant after Mori. But the account says they ran into tigers, which I don't think there's tigers in Japan, like at least in the wild, which is also like conflicted with the story of how the tiger story is related to him being brought on a Korean invasion exploit. So I didn't write it in the PowerPoint because there were too many conflicting accounts of it, and I couldn't tell which one was the more accepted idea. But I thought to mention it anyway because that also explains why Nihongo is afraid of tigers, because at some point in his life, whoever had him got attacked by tigers. The story happened in Korea. Yeah, like that really makes sense because Korea has the tigers, and that's why Kato Kiyomasa also had the penchant for tiger hunting, and he brought home the heads for Toyotomi Hideyoshi. But that's a story for another time. Nihon's gotten around. Yes. He is a pass-around boy. At present, the spear can be found at Fukuoka City Museum alongside many other items from the Kuroda family. I realize I don't seem to have included in the slides, but because of the drinking story, Nihongo is also sometimes referred to as Nomotori no Yari, or take away spear. So like basically that name is just people saying, that's the spear that got taken away because someone got drunk. And he is also included in mentioned in the Kuroda Bushi folk songs. So he is very, very well loved by the Kuroda family. He's at the City Museum, which I know also has hasebe on permanent-ish exhibit. At least I know that usually if people go to see the museum, they can find hasebe there. And I think sometimes Hakata is there too, but I don't think he's like. I think he's just usually on loan at times. We have to check on that. But yeah, he is one of the, compared to many of the other spears, Nihongo is very easy to visit if you're going to Japan. There, here's the thing that I mentioned about having to come back to Hideyoshi later on. Hasebe and Nihongo have a conversation together, but was it with Mori where they met? No, it was with Kuroda. No worries. I appreciate asking because that means you're paying attention, which makes me very happy. So, coming back to Hideyoshi, there's this theory that instead of receiving the spear from Nobunaga, he got it from the Emperor Goyoze. Furthermore, it was said that at this time, Nihongo was originally a tachi, so he was a sword. As in, in that very definition, he was a sword apparently. Hideyoshi apparently didn't feel that it was right to wear something that was of great value to the imperial family on his waist, so he decided to have it remounted as a spear so he could hold it above his head. So it's like, the whole, if he wears it on his waist, it's like, it feels like he's saying he's above something that was of imperial ownership. So he's like, oh, well, I don't want to be rude, or like that feels rude. So he gets the sword remounted into a spear, and that's why Nihongo is like that now. But because this, okay, this is just a theory. So I thought to bring this up because it's such an interesting tangent of like, you don't usually hear of this kind of rumors about most swords. So I brought this up, but this is considered to be mostly just an anecdote, like a weird legend of sorts, because it conflicts with too many ownership accounts in between the emperor and like getting into Hideyoshi's hands, because the latter line of ownership is a lot more supported with both written and oral accounts. So, but like this is like just a very fascinating thought, and some artists have actually taken this to like make fan art of him as like an imperial ownership version of Nihongo, and instead of using a spear, he uses a tachi, which is like very, very cool. I think they also gave him they usually give him like longer hair too. It's very cool. I wish I could share those fan art with you, but they're mostly stuff I had saved in my personal folder, so I've long since lost the sources, or even if I try to reverse search them, the users have either deleted their accounts off Twitter or privated. So out of respect for that, I don't want to just be reposting fan art. Like I'm very strict with myself with that. I mean, like if I can source some off Pixiv, I'll share them on Twitter. But if I can't, then you just kind of have to go digging yourself. Usually the big swords get smaller, but here it's the opposite, right? Oh, and like, if you think about it, it's like he must have been a very straight tachi. If we're gonna assume this is real, because the spear is very straight. So if you had to carve it down into a spear from a tachi, that would have been a lot of material to lose. Because even the swords that are reshaped, like if the tip breaks or like it breaks at an angle, sometimes they can be retooled to still be usable at shorter shapes, but they would look a little bit off, like the point is too sharp and it just kind of looks more like shards of metal. So that's another reason why I think this is just a theory, that, just a cool thought. Fun fact, remounting swords as spears is a thing in the West too. There's a Norse saga that mentions a spear whose name implies it was originally a sport. It was so good at stabbing it. Ooh! That's very, very cool. It's nice to hear about parallels like that across different nations. And just shows that everyone's like, well, as long as it works, then it's not dumb. Next. Wait, am I missing something? Let's see if I'm missing my notes. No, that's for later. Okay. So we're moving on to his characterizations in the game itself. And in Fanon, he's heavily characterized as an old drinking type uncle in the game, heavily referencing the drinking match between Masanori and Taihei. He has several lines where he is having a drink or is currently in search of one. You know, like, especially if you, the most notable one for me is when you have him as your attendant and go to the shop and he's like, "Are you bringing wine? Wait, you're not? Okay." However, he also constantly reminds the Seniwa that even if he or others invite him for a drink, they should only do so if they really want to, and be careful not to get swept away by the mood. So, even if he's like if he does nothing but drink all day, Nihongo is actually quite responsible and doesn't promote just being peer pressured into drinking if you don't really want to, especially because like he knows firsthand that could get you into trouble one way or another. And he does seem displeased about the reputation he has in regards to being taken away from his master as a result of making irresponsible decisions. This then leads to how, despite giving the impression of a lazy drunkard, he is quick to take up the role of leading others and carrying out his duties with dignity. In fact, he's quite eager to prove that he is worthy of being called Japan's best. If you listen to his lines, and when you take him to sorties and he's the set as captain, he's like very imposing. He commands his comrades so well, and he even has this image of like stepping forward and challenging the enemy first. Like, you know who I am. If you think you can take me on, then come at me. So, despite him being drunk all the time, he's not a slob, he's not lazy. He won't shy from a battle. Responsible wine uncle. Yeah. So, he's... how do I say this? Let's find the words. Also, weird Buddhist connection since there's a hell specifically for people. Oh, wow. Like, a hell specifically for people who peer pressure others into drinking? Really? Like, that's indeed a special place in hell, and it kind of makes sense too, because most of the time if you force people to drink, you may also have like ulterior motives apart from that. Like, you might want to get them drunk for certain reasons. So I guess that kind of makes sense. That's very cool. I didn't write it here, but Nihongo's responsibility also like extends to how he's shown to be very nice towards the Tanto, like the younger looking guys, to put it in a way. Especially a scene in Hanamaru where he's really trying his best to get along with Gokotai, but then he's just also like scared shitless by the tigers. But he's really trying. Like, he even roped in Otigine and Ton would help him out about it. And of course, people also love depicting him with Hakata. Like, they just hang out a lot, and even Jiro Suzuki reinforced that in this picture, which is from Kuronosuke's Citadel of Observation. He's just lounging around, and Hakata is very excitedly coming to ask him to play board games with him, which is very, very sweet, because you'd think like he wouldn't be this excited about it if he didn't think Nihongo would say yes, right? So, Nihongo, he may stink, but he won't get you into trouble as best as he could. Stop. What else do I have to say about him? Do you guys have any stories about him or anything you want to say? Because my notes on him are pretty short, mostly because all of it is in the slides. But yeah. You love him? Yes, you do. Responsible, caring, drunken uncle. Actually, this reminds me, if you have him as your attendant and you trigger the long absence line, it's kind of sad, because what he says is like, have I been drinking so much that I've started seeing things like when you come back after a long while, because like for you to trigger the absence line, it has to be 2 weeks if I remember correctly. So you've been gone for so long, he thinks that you aren't actually there when he sees you. Cause like, I think I've had too much to drink because I'm seeing ghosts of my Saniwa now. Oh no. Right? That makes me very sad. Like, he's usually so confident about not over drinking himself, but to imply that he has had nothing else better to do while you were away, that he thinks you're just a ghost is, oh, I'm sorry for being gone. Like, most of these the log absence lines are kind of that tone, like they make you feel bad for leaving, but some of them are also like very chill. But like I think this one is one of my favorites in the sense that it makes me feel extra bad. He spends a lot of time on grooming and has a lot of right, like I'm sure he has expensive tastes because he was very loved by the imperial family. Like if he was a token danshi at the time, he would be so spoiled. And in his time with the Kuroda, I found an anecdote about how if he's displayed somewhere, he also has like this little posse of like 27 other spears surrounding him wherever he was. So it's like, you know, Big Daddy Nihon. And I almost forgot to mention, I know we all joke about him. Let's go back to that one slide. I know we all joke about him looking like a janitor and such because of his jumpsuit, but I've given this a lot of thought, and I realized that I think this might be an aviation jumpsuit. He's supposed to be like dressed like a pilot, which also explains his goggles. Which, hear me out, I'm saying this because Fukuoka has an airport and a military airbase, which I'm not sure if it's still active, but it's like a US training base, which is mainly for the Air Force. So maybe it's that. Like, I don't see why they would use that for him, but it's something related to him, you know? It said he is slightly indifferent to the Saniwa, then you slowly start to grow connected to him. Yeah, because he's one of the few in comparison, like we have 100 swords now, but he was one of the first swords that didn't strictly refer to the Saniwa as by title. Like usually they would call you Aruji, Taicho, and Nushi-sama, but he's just like, he always just refers to you as if he's just like another guy, like he's on their same level. Like it's not necessarily rude, but it's more casual. Can you call it casual? Yeah, let's go with that. He saw it and thought it was so cool, he went and manifested for it. Right. Like, it's always been one of my most thought of mysteries. Like, why does he look like that? Because if he's like from the imperial treasury, shouldn't he be more lavishly dressed? But then he's also very cozy. Also, shout out to like Toeiga for giving him that funny little pajama onesie. That was the best part of the movie, in my opinion. He needs his drinking buddies. Nankai says he spent the whole time we were gone reading books. Uwe. So yeah, there's a lot of uncertainties about his history, but it doesn't really deter people from thinking he's the best, which is pretty damn cool. They just can't deny. Spear hot. So we're moving on to Google Slides, get it together. Patigin. There we go. Patigin. My green boy. The onesie was peak costuming. I love that it was addressed by everyone else at the time, dude. They're like, what are you wearing? Like, what were they discussing? I think they were discussing something about how to tackle the anomalies in like the plot. Then he was just lounged there with his onesie. Go cousin. That's right. That's right. He's the other. He's not a go cousin. He's a go in law because he's married to Inaba. Chos. Actually, that come to think, that would explain why his queso is so fancy. His combat and duties are meant to get dirty. Yes, yes, yes. You good thing you brought it up because I feel the same way about his queso. Like, people, people address like, oh, like Gigi's is so lavish and pretty, cause and like people were like talking about like the sheer layer of his queso is like very expensive fabric, but then like Nihongo though, hello. Hello, is no one gonna talk about Nihongo? Oh my god. So like, I should have maybe I could hang on. We need to talk about that case. So I think I have a picture of it. If I do, we will talk about it. We need to address it. Very important. Browsing. The way I have most of the official spear assets on hand. Like I really need Ningen Mokotsu to be ripped soon because he's the only one missing from my collection. Where is I do. I have it. Here, there he is. Like, look at this. He even has like the formal overcoat which has like the family crests. So like for context, the more family crests your topwear has, the more formal it's considered. So like, look, it's gorgeous. And like he's even accessory. Let's zoom in. Our joke is that Nihongo got dressed for that date night and Tonbo and Hina immediately fell under. It's true though, like okay. I'll put the other two up as well because I think I have them as well. Okay, so like you guys can go discuss that while I go find Tonbo. Yeah, here's Tonbo. Honestly, like not gonna lie, kind of disappointed with Tonbo. They could have at least put his hair down. Oops. But they did not. But it's okay. At least he's more casual now. Which ironically is him wearing more clothes than he normally does. Yeah, you should buy it. It's totally worth it. I also now realize I forgot a very, very important part of discussing the characterization, which is their attendant music. Because if you compare their attendant musics, Nihongo is also the fanciest. Like you could definitely imagine walking in a great imperial hall with that playing in the back. So like yeah, like look at how fancy Nihongo is compared to these two. And like I would just like to point out Otegine's like sandals have like little heels on it because he actually, like if you guys know, he complains about like the other Naginata and like Yari being taller than him. He doesn't like that because we'll get to that, his spearhead is actually the biggest one of the three. So like yeah, there's our boys. Nihongo's out here to steal your man or woman or your partner. I'm slowly buying them all in release order on Azuki currently. Wow, that dedication. I'm too antsy to like run out of Koban, even though I am actually a very rich Saniwa in terms of that, but I don't want to run out of it. But yeah, as mentioned, his Nihongo's taste in finery is fine indeed. I mean, like I can't fault Otegine or Tonbo for their taste. I mean, like it matches them. And I think, fun fact, I think Otegine's queso is featured in his museum. Like I don't know if they based the queso off that one in the museum or if the museum had one made that looks like the one in game. It's very, very cool. Yeah, it's rolling lean back. I'm going to work. Gine is Gine. That's right. Gine is just, yes, that's our boy. Your fit is mid. No. No. I mean, if we're gonna take it literally, Nihongo has the money to shop. He doesn't need to ask RG for an allowance. He has a court rank. He has money. What is that on his shoulders? That's a howdy. It's really meant as like an overcoat. Could you like imagine him like giving that to you when you're cold? Wala lang. We're getting derailed, so I better discuss Otigines first before we sit here and gush way too much about that stinky man. Okay, back here. So Otigine is number 138. He's right next to Nihongo in the sword book. His school is also unlisted. He is illustrated by Minato and voiced by Kenji Hamada. Minato is also the same artist that drew Ochidori, Jumonjiari, and Udo Yokomitsu, while for Tonbokiri's Minamoto Satoru drew Nene Kirimaru, and Jiro Suzuki drew Nihongo and all the Samonji. So that's like Sayo, Kosetsu, Soza, and Taiko. And I really hope that they get Satoru Minamoto to draw a Tanto so that all three Yari artists have also drawn a Tanto. Otigine is the shortest of the three Senmeisu at 192, which he finds annoying. I will explain shortly why. He was forged in 1570 by Gojo Yoshisuke as a commission by Yuki Harutomo, the head of the Yuki clan at the time. He's named after its scabbard shaped like a pestle, which I've shown here. Like this is not the original scabbard, but it's a recreation of it. So like you can like I think this is the one that was completed in 2003 as a part of the restoration project, but yeah, not the original but a faithful recreation. So the spear was commissioned by Yuki Harutomo, and there's also an anecdote relating to his name in regards to his owner, where it's said that Yuki Harutomo arrived home from battle with 10 heads skewered onto the spear. Like, that's your first hint about how large this spear was. Like, it's big enough to fit 10 adult heads. Then one of the heads in the middle fell off, giving the spear a bloody silhouette of a pestle. So you can pick whichever interpretation you want in regards to Otegine's namesake. And here's that same picture next to a traditional kine, which you can kind of see the resemblance, right? Like, of course, the pestle is a lot skinnier. Tom were wearing straw sandals and Kine is wearing cloth. Oh no, that made me so... I'm glad to inflict the brain rot. All according to plan. Otekine made kebabs with human heads, which is funny because there is in fact like there's always a lot of fan art of him eating kebabs because all he says is like, oh, I'm only good at stabbing, so you must be good at kebabs, right, Gine? Next. Particularly unique amongst the rest of the spears found in Token Ranbu, Otegine has a triangular cross-section with equal measurements found on all sides. This made it more suited for piercing, thrusting motions, rather than slashing from side to side. So, this is a picture of that recreation of Otegine, modern recreation from 2003, and you can see here how awkwardly it has to fit in the picture and how big it is compared to this guy, which I don't remember what his name was because I just got this off Wikimedia Commons and the description was non-existent. But yeah, the measurements are more or less accurate to what it was historically because they made the recreation based off documents they found owned by the Yuki family. Is little Hanamaru nightmare like being chased by more? Yes. Like I love that they managed to slip in that little joke about his nightmare. Cause like it's on its own. It's like such a weird dream to have, which it makes sense because like nightmares really are weird and make no sense. But if you knew the context about Otegine, it makes it extra funny. So, to elaborate, so usually like with spears and like most weapons, they're most like if you look at it from like facing the edge, it would be pretty flat, right? Like maybe it's a little diamond like, but Otegine's is very unique because he is a very triangular boy. Like if I had to describe, he's basically shaped like a Toblerone tapering at a pointy end. So that's why you can't really use him much for slashing and cutting because he doesn't have much of a cutting edge. It's more of like blunt sides all around. The weird angle for long things. I know it well from every Utachi picker ever I know, right? I would, although all the Yari so far, I would not want to fight against someone building Otegine. Funny you should say that because later we'll discuss in regards to his usage what that was all about. Tablero Otegine. Nakakainis. That's so... I hate that you're right about it. Okay, however, it was also a very large spear, as you can see in the picture, which combined with its weight of 22.5 kilos, which as far as I can tell only refers to the spearhead itself, generally made it difficult to put into practical use. So instead, it is thought to be used as an umajirushi or horse insignia when marching to war or during Sankin Kotai. So, big, heavy boy. And I if I remember correctly, the measurement for the blade is 333 centimeters compared to Tonbo's 45 and Nihongo's 60, which brings me to this fun picture over here. There we go. Someone made this like length comparison. Like that's how they compare next to each other in real life. But like, look at Otegine, he's huge. So like no wonder he complains about why his Tokendanshi form is one of the shorter ones for the pole arms. Like, he got shafted. Look at that. Like, how did it end up that Tonbo, like, their heights were reversed, that Tonbo got to be the tall boy, even though most of his height was from the shaft itself rather than the spearhead. Right. Tonbo the small boy. That's right, he got shafted. Okay, I'm gonna have to behave before you guys leave my stream. Please don't, we're only halfway through. So yeah, Otegine is very big and very heavy, so think about, where is it? Look at him. He's not nearly as wide as these two, and yet he has the biggest spearhead. Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you carry it around with one hand like it's no problem? I mean, like, that's technically your real body, but still. Sheesh. Yeah, actually, Kokorota, before they released the sword book, everyone actually headcanon that Otegine was in fact the tallest one. And like, so like when the sword book came out and they realized, wait, what? Tonbo's the tallest one? There was also a lot of memes of it, of like Otegine crying because why am I short? That's not fair. So Otegine whining about having to look up at the other Naginata and spears is very justified because they should be the ones looking up at him. Oops, there we go. Next, notable wielders and current whereabouts. Being commissioned by Yuki Harutomo, he passed the spear down to his son, Yuki Hideyasu, which did end up becoming the head of the family after his dad. And yes, that is, in fact, the guy in Kisho Hongi. So, you know how well that went if you watched it. If you know, you know. Which, thanks Token Ranbu for the pain. I like the pain very much. Thank you. By the way, the picture is once again an unlabeled picture from Wikimedia Commons, but I would assume these are like the people that forged the replica, just posing with it while I don't. I think the sword has just been tempered, so it just needs to be polished up. But yeah, it's pretty cool, like seeing it stand on its own, even without like the shaft attached to it. Otigine remained with the Yuki family, later becoming the Yuki Matsudaira family, for the entirety of his existence until the air raids of May 25, 1945 hit the warehouse where the family kept the spear, and it was damaged beyond repair. Like, the warehouse got set on fire by like air raid bombs. They couldn't get Otigine out in time. And by the time they were able to put out the fire and like salvage the stuff in the warehouse, apparently the damage report was that it was so badly burnt they couldn't even use that original metal to like reforge, like they just make a new spear in that shape, which is like very, very sad. That's why he has like that fire pattern on his shirt too, because fire. He can go sit with Ichigo in the "we got damaged by fire" corner, and Soza and Yagen and Mitsutada. Okay, so ue. God, talking about it still makes me very sad. Which, by the way, it's not as prominent nowadays. Yes. So like the first batch of swords have like a secondary injured line, which is now removed from the game. So like every sword just now has one injured line. But his was like he was having dreams about like the warehouse fire, which is also why the fact that Hanamaru put him in a warehouse in one of the endings, I was like, why would you do that? Stop. That's not fair. Anyway, as I mentioned, a restoration project was launched in 2002, completing a replica of Otigine in 2003. This was made by a team in Shimada, Shizuoka, and they later donated to Yuki City, which now has it on permanent display at the Yuki Koramikan. So Nihongo and Otigine are both more or less on permanent exhibition, and Otigine also has like several replicas, which it's a bit confusing because around the area, I think, like even around Yuki City itself, I think there's at least one other replica or two, because there's a festival where they still bring out a replica of Otigine, which is, if you've seen the memes of Otigine with traffic cones, like he seems to be either scared of traffic cones or just wearing a traffic cone on his head. That's actually in reference to an old Sanking Kotai ceremony joke or like meme, because they had to like put the spear down for a bit on the side of the road, and like to keep people away or from like stepping on it, they put cones around him. So it's like people started memeing it as like Otigine couldn't get, like he was afraid of the cone and couldn't go anywhere else. Anyway, yeah. So this also plays into why Otigine's design is like that. Let's see. Let's go back. There, I know, like even I was like guilty of this. Like I know a lot of people make comments like, oh, Otigine looks kind of plain and not quite like a sword boy compared to other people. Which like it's true. He just kind of looks like he's in a school uniform, like a Gakuran almost. Which is something considering the Awataguchi boys are all also in like very strict uniform as well as the Go's. But anyway. I like to think that the reason he's so plainly dressed is because he's influenced by the fact that he had to be remade in modern times. Because if you consider him quote-unquote reborn because of it, he would be the youngest sword in the entire roster because he would have been born in 2003. But I mean, like, but of course he has the memories of the original one from 1570, so technically he's not really the youngest. But if you wanted to interpret it that way, you could, and it would also explain why he's so plainly and normally dressed compared to everyone else, even like the Osafone who are wearing all dashing suits and like slides, please don't glitch, that's hard on the eyes. Oh my god. It's like that meme about Shih Tzus being trapped by soda can force fields. Yes, it's like exactly like that. So, canon and fan. I died in a raid and reincarnated as a zoomer. Hime, no! I shouldn't laugh at it, but oh, that's really how it was. Oh no. Poor boy. Okay, let's move on to his characterization in the game. Otegina starts out feeling like he isn't as impressive as Tonbokiri and Nihongo because of his lack of war experience, occasionally making comments wondering if it's really okay to pick him for the task at hand since all he's good at is stabbing. Like, he has a recollection with Dodanuki called useless objects. That's why you can, like, some people refer to him and Dodanuki as Muyogumi, or like useless group, because they basically talk about how they were unfortunate enough to be at a point in time where they didn't really get a chance to shine, because by the time they were like made, wartime was basically dying out, so there was like really no use for them apart from being ornamental, which in Dodanuki's case didn't really help him because he wasn't ornamental, he was meant to be practical, but he found himself in his Kiwame, thankfully, and so did Otegine. I think it's sweet that he looks so plain because it gives some variety along with quote-unquote ugly boys, Iwan Dodanuki, but he's plain but sociable. Yes, you get it. You get exactly why, while I have like Saniwa ships with Tonbo and Sanchomo, if I had to date any guy in Token Ranbo, it would probably be Otegine because he's just a guy you want to kiss, and he eats a lot. I like that in a man. Otegine would love embroidery, right? Just a lot of repeated stabbings, making something pretty. Him like a 20-year-old dude fooling around in Saniwa's horror in their 20s. That's right, you get it. That's exactly his appeal. Yes! Anyway, composing myself. Despite all his complaints about being assigned tasks that he feels he isn't suited for, in the end, he still does his best to see it done. This is best seen whenever you send him to internal affairs. Like, when you send him to do horsework, you're like, you're making a spear do horse duty? Why? But then, after it, you can tell he did actually do what you assigned him to. He also gives the same complaint about being sent to the field. Like, I'm not a hoe. I can't till the land. I'm a spear. I'm meant for stabbing. Why are you doing this? But he says I ended up going with it anyway. He just thinks about it a lot. And I love this new headcanon of him having hobbies related to stabbing. He definitely like I need fan art of that now. Him just like making like little felt citadel members and like giving it to the Saniba. After his Kiwame, he comes around to the idea that while he might have regrets about his past, he at least now has a chance to prove himself in the present as a token danshi. So his Kiwame, spoilers for his letters by the way, he pays a visit to Yuki Hideyasu, who he says is a bit of a tragic figure because he was never meant to achieve great war stuff at all, and like he kind of like feels bad for them because he relates, because despite being called a Sanmeiso, he feels like he hasn't actually done much in comparison to Tonbo and Nihongo, and he even gets mad at himself because he's like, I can't say that because the saying was between me and Nihongo anyway, which is there is Nihongo in the west and Otegine in the east. So like there's like this saying relating to both of them, and like Tonbo is nowhere there. Even though like Tonbo could technically proxy for Otegine because they were on the same side, because the Matsudaira eventually become part of the Tokugawa and or like related to them in a way. It's a branching thing, and like Honda was like a retainer to the Tokugawa. But then he's like, well, I feel bad for what happened to my master, but now that I'm a token danshi, maybe if I do well now, I could help bring justice and people to know him better by proxy. So after his kiwame, he like resolves to like keep doing better and keep up or even surpass Tonbo and Nihongo. It's actually quite cute because when he comes back from Kiwame, the first thing is he wants the Saniwa's help to become the best spear in the world. So he's not just gunning to like overthrow Nihongo as Japan's best. He wants to be the best in the world. So like, I love this character development. You go, my baby. Let's go. He makes a little felt tiger for Nihongo as vengeance for Nihongo being taller than him. It could be like those like videos of like people pranking their cats with cucumbers. Like he just sets it down in the corner where Nihongo is and just freaks him out. His Kiwami sprite looks more confident, doesn't it? Like, yeah, it does. Like the way he like has like his hand propped up and like that little grin he has. I think I have that one too. Pien, all the piens, that's right. Otengi na Kiwami, there we go. Oh, hello. Oh dear. I think I broke it. Oh wait, no, I didn't. There we go. There's our confident green man. I love this so much. Like, I remember I didn't want to get spoiled for any of the Yari Kiwame, and when he came back like this, I basically cried because yes, look at him, he's grown so much. And like his design is just honestly very cool. It's still a bit plain, but definitely confident. He's geared up. He's ready to kick ass and become the best. And that button up is just chef's kiss. And he finally takes his shirt off in Kiwab in his awakening too, which, yeah, that's right. Show off those abs. That's right. People can't call you a twink because you're not a twink. You could bench press them and their friends, and you would do it well. He is often depicted enjoying food in official illustrations and fan art, eventually reinforced in canon with a line where he explicitly says that eating makes him happy. I actually recently just found about this myself because this is for one of the special bento, which I kind of forget to use most of the time, so I actually tend to not know the special lines for them. I just found about this one recently. So it's like, it's just the cutest thing. Like, it's a very human thing to say, eating makes me happy. And on top of that, you can kind of relate it to him probably needing to eat so much because of how heavy his spear is. So like, he baby needs his calories. So like, go on, eat as much as you want. You deserve it. So, and like here I included the very, very adorable Kuronosuke investigation art of that Minato did of him and Fudo, where he is 100% eyeing Fudo's snacks, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure Fudo is in Kiwame here since he looks so happy. Actually, both of them must be. So thank you very much, Minato Sensei, for this wonderful picture of two sunshine boys. But I do hope like Fudo intends to share, because Otigine might poach his food anyway. He needs some milk. No, he needs meat. He needs the protein and carbs. He doesn't need more milk. Well, I guess he could, just so he can catch up to the other Yari, but he's fine. You're wonderful. You're wonderful, Gina, the way you are. So I just really like Otigine because, you know, like, despite him being plain and whatnot, it's also kind of like a confidence issue, because it's like, yeah, I'm only good at stabbing, but I'm the best at stabbing. Like, Nihongo and Tonbo can't stab as hard as he can. And one thing I wish they included in Token Ranbu is the anecdotes about weather. Actually, maybe do I have this in the slides? I don't. Let's just discuss that real quick. But in regards to Otigine and his where is it? In regards to Otigine and his sheath, so he is usually used in front of the procession as a sanking in sanking kote, right? Like as a horse insignia. There's this saying that if you have him at the front of the procession, it would start to rain. So he's like, apparently they think he has an influence on the weather, which is pretty awesome. And excuse me. And another saying is that if you took him out of his sheath, you would summon snow, which is like, why didn't you use that in game? That's, well, I guess it's probably like it would make him look way too cool compared to Tonboy Nihongo. But let's be real, he is the coolest, isn't he? Right. Anyway, but I am at least glad that over the years I did see a few artists use it as a plotline for like a short comic or dojin. Like I've seen some dojin where the citadel is experiencing a drought, and like they've tried everything they could. Like even Ishikiremaru has like participated in like trying to summon rain. And then they like realize, wait, couldn't Otegine do it? And then like they all turn to him, and because the way he is, and like it was written at the time that he didn't have Kiwame yet, or I think Kiwame just wasn't even a thing in the game period. But he got nervous about it because he's like, I don't know if I could actually do that right now. But he does end up being able to, and he felt really good about being able to help the Citadel with something that he was only able to achieve. Like I think that was a very nice thing of the artist to do, and you know, it's a rare piece of work. I wish I could have purchased it to support them, but yeah. But again, having some gentle supernatural abilities, right? Like it's not something like, let's say, Udenta's like super strength or like his affinity with like lightning. It's something so mundane like summoning snow or rain, which also is a nice little nod that Minato did for his first anniversary image where he's like sitting in the snow with a little snowman. So like maybe he summoned it and like just had a little fun. That's a cute idea. Weathering with you with Otegine. Nar. Okay. So actually yeah. That's all I have on Otegine, but I think that's quite a lot compared to like how he usually looks at first glance. Do you guys have anything to share or to ask before we move on to Ochidori, Jumonji Yari, which is that's gonna be a doozy. I know you guys have seen me talk about the lack of things I can include for him. Function gameplay wise, actually, now that you think up, like now that you bring that up, that's true because they did have like the rain mechanics in some of the maps. Like it's in map 7 in era 7, I think. Yes. Do you know where the lighting thing comes from in with Odenta? From what I know, it was like some sort of saying, like when he is unsheathed, he brings lightning. It's like something similar like that. Like just another allusion to like his strong spiritual abilities, or was it that the sword is stronger when it's like there's a thunderstorm? I'll have to look it up and like share it on Twitter again later. But yeah, like Gin is a sweetie and I love him. That's right. That's the most important takeaway from here. Oh, actually, look, if I talk, I'm kind of like booping his cheek. Boop. I'm being way too distracted, but yeah. Otegine is hiding a lot of magic under his funny little shirt. And from there, we're moving on to Ochidori Jumonji Yari, number 194, and can we just look at how many question marks I had to put on him? This wasn't for a lack of trying, by the way, and I'll explain in a bit. So like just bear with me. Or they could have made it that he was resistant to rain debuffs. Although, another thing I forgot to mention in regards to the rain thing, I don't know if they meant like the scabbard got heavier or if like somehow the spear itself got heavier, but at 22.5 kilos, they said that if he got rained on, he would increase his weight up to like 37 kilos, which would just made him massively heavier. So he might actually be extra debuffed in the ring because of that. Like, I think it's probably the scabbard, and considering he hates his scabbard, maybe it could be immunity too, who knows. Anyway, back to Ochi. He doesn't have an assigned school. He is drawn by Minato, as I said earlier, and voiced by Umehara Yuichiro. We don't have his height yet because he hasn't appeared in a sword book yet, or if he has, I forgot to check. Oopsie. So if I'm wrong about this, please do just sound off in the chat. I just realized I might have goofed this one. Oops. But yeah, and we don't know anything about his smithing information at all either. Like there's no even like guesses like with Nihongo was earlier. And as you can see in the header, I even had to put ellipsis question mark because there's just such a lack of specifics on him, which I will continue to discuss the more we move forward. Why do I keep... okay. I just realized the reason I keep getting pings was because I forgot to mute my Discord. Whoopsie! Let me just do that real quick, because I imagine it might be distracting for you guys as well. RJ covered in bear fur, which would get... Yeah, that's true. It would absorb water. Okay, so Ochi. The name comes from how the prongs, or like cross sections, make the spear resemble a plover in flight, a small type of bird, compared to the usual straight prongs found on your typical Jumonji Yari, or which literally means cross-shaped spear, which I've included a picture here of an Ochidori Jumonji Yari, but this is not the one that's used in the game. It's just one that bears a similar shape, which you can definitely agree that it does have a bird-like silhouette to it. I'll show when you see Ningen Mokotsu later, the difference becomes a lot more obvious as well. Not yet. We can kind of guess based on other people's height, but yeah, okay, good. I did not forget my due diligence. So, again, this picture is not of the Ochidori itself. It's just something like that. Keep that in mind. Despite Sanada Yukimura, also known as Sanada Nobushige in history, famously known for his skill with the spear, you don't actually know much about the spear itself, such as its smith and forge date, or if anyone else of note outside his family, I made a typo there, took it into their possession after his passing. The spear itself doesn't even have its own page on Meito, which, to people who haven't looked into it, Meito is a page which everyone kind of likes to use as their first reference for swords, because it's basically a Japanese sword database which collects their names, their anecdotes, what smiths they are. Even a lot of other sites reference this as well. So Sanada's spear did not have its own entry in Meito. It was just listed as one of his weapons under his own entry. Like, I think off the top of my head, of all his weapons, Hanjin is the only one that had his own page, which is kind of ironic because, you know, Hanjin is like our little dust wakizashi, affectionately. So the only thing mentioned about it on Meito is how I quote, a part of its remains are now in the Sanada Museum at Kudoyama, Wakayama Prefecture. So the location of the museum is important because like there's more than one Sanada Museum, which it has. Like the other one is the Sanada Treasure Museum at Matsushiro, Nagano. However, when I looked this up, like the museums up, I wanted to see if maybe they would have exhibit photos of this so-called remains of the spear. The official page, that like the tourism page for the area, only mentions that the museum houses replicas used for a drama called Sanada Maru that aired in 2016, and nothing about like the actual artifacts, which was it made me like raise an eyebrow, because why would you mention replicas used in a TV show over actual items? So it's like, do you have like I am sure they have like actual historical artifacts there, but do you have the spear itself or not? So like it makes me question like that listing that they may have it, because even if they didn't want to put it on exhibit, they would at least mention it, right? So I I'm just saying like there's writings that they might have it, but I also can't seem to confirm it, so take that with a grain of salt. So there's do you guys see now why I had such trouble trying to come up with Ochi's section here? Like I really tried. Like I tried to find like I think I spent a whole day on his section more than anyone else, because I I didn't wanna like just give up so easily, because like there's no way that he doesn't have this much info unless there was no way that was possible unless he wasn't just one specific spear in the first place. So, referencing his representation in Canon and Fanon, he has a lot of lines about wanting to hear stories, wanting to make stories, kind of like it reminds me a bit of Sengo talking about the legend of the Muramasa. And he also always kind of gives everyone a reminder that he is Sanada Yukimura's spear. Outside of that, he only really knows how to fight, but it's somehow in a more like baseline way than Dodanoki's, because like Dodanoki's interest is in fighting, but it's not necessarily because that's all he knows to do. Like he knows he's good at it, but he could probably do other things. He just doesn't think he has to or wants to in the first place, if that makes sense. There's also the way that Tomoe decided Ochidori Jumonjiari was like him and Shizuka, sword spirits that lack a story of their own outside of their shape, which, as I mentioned in his naming origins, he was named after how the spear looked like a bird in flight. So the same with Tomoe and Shizuka being named after the shapes distinguishing one Naginata type from another. The only difference is that when Ochidori manifested, he chose to attach, not really chose, because as Choson often mentions, they don't really know how these things are determined when they manifest. But yeah, he decided to call himself specifically Yukimura Spear. But as I've shown before, there's very little evidence of like being able to determine what that exact spear is, because for all intents and purposes, Yukimura didn't even seem to name his spear. Like, yeah, he used it, but there wasn't any like special indicator for him. You know, like usually if you really liked a weapon, like most of our characters in Touken Ranbu, you would either call them by their smith name or you would give them a unique name of their own based on your experiences with them. To be quite honest, if the spear was in Cormant for 100 to 500 years, it probably got trashed, right? It's rather easy to lose. Yeah. Like, especially with, like, the whole confiscating thing that the Americans did too, of, like, throwing stuff in the water. We know at least one sword who got victimized by that. You've always been confused about whether Ochi is a composite like Tomoe or based on a specific spear. Can it be like Omokage, where the most reputable sword surfaces as the main token that is personal? Right. Like, why he asserts himself as a Yukimura spear, which, in that regard, let's bring up some of the screen caps, which were graciously provided to me by Kaze, because I don't play EN, and I would have preferred to use the EN telling, because it would be the official way they chose to translate these. So, here, Tomoe immediately says, like, you don't seem to have a story of your own either. And Ochidori immediately counters with, like, in case you weren't in the loop, I'm Sanada Yukimura Spear. And then Tomoe he doesn't really, like, object to it, but he's like, oh, well, I mean, I guess it makes sense why you would claim that, since all of the Ochidori Jumonji spears are quite similar to each other in the sense they're all named after their shape. So he will have a greater affinity for such stories. And again, because Sanada didn't seem to really name his spear in the first place, any Ochidori Jumonji Yari manifestation could technically claim to be it, and no one could really say no know either. And papers. Oh man, did they not save it? But yeah, after this, Shizuka is like Shizuka and Ian says that it Uchidori Jumonjiari basically has like very large shoes to fill if he wants to say that's who he is. Which, like, to supplement that, Uchi doesn't really have, like, for lack of a better way to put it, Uchidori Jumonjiari does not have much of a personality outside of saying his Yukimura's spear and, like, talking about battle. So here, like, I actually looked up on this. The most I could find, like, that he said, he talks about Yukimura in terms of, like, so a lot of the swords are like very fond of their masters, right? Or they might even detest them the way like Hasebe and Soza dislike Nobunaga for what they did or what he did to them. In Ochi's case, the most he says about Yukimura Sanada that feels like personal accounts is he alludes to going back to the mountains, which is a reference to when Yukimura was exiled to Mount Koya after fighting for the west side against the Tokugawa during the Battle of Sekigahara. So it's a bit of a complicated thing, but it was said that Sanada had promised to fight for Ieyasu, but then some political stuff happened. Like he probably thought he would be better off siding with the West because he didn't think Ieyasu would win, stuff like that. So he ended up fighting for the other side, which of course pissed Ieyasu off. So after the war was won, he exiled Yukimura to the mountains for it, so he could stop, he could prevent them from doing any more betrayals and the like. And well, apart from that is like Ochi has a thing for red, which Yukimura was the Sanada were famously known for wearing red armor, but he doesn't say anything else outside of that. He doesn't mention the Sanada 10 Braves. He doesn't mention like the rumors about ninjas or like even about Sanada's family life, stuff like that. He doesn't say a whole lot. Like it kind of makes you think like maybe he's just not very like, maybe he just doesn't like to share, but the way he really insists he's Yukimura's spear makes you think that why does it feel like you don't know that much about him? So it's like, you really do have big shoes to fill, as Shizuka says, and you seem to be having trouble with that. And yeah, like I really couldn't find like any pictures that seem to be of older specimens that are attributed to Sanada's usage. So his existence is more than a little hazy, because Muso Yukimura wasn't building a Jumonjiari, but so oh really? Like they didn't give Yukimura a Jumonjiari? That's an interesting choice, because he's like the most, well, I mean like it's either him or more Oni Musashi that people first think of when you say like a cross-shaped spear. Huh. I really should get back to Muso. The 10 Braves and Ninja thing might sense from another are literally literary creations of the mid to late Edo era. I guess so, but like that's true. Like they really are like works of fiction, but the way he doesn't address it at all, like considering we have someone like what his name eludes me, Ichimonji, our old man Ichimonji, whose existence as a Shinsengumi sword is totally fictional, but he acknowledges it and uses it as part of himself. So it's like there's a lot of factors that work against Ochi's defense and insistence that he's a Sanada sword. And thank you, Kiku Ikomonji, my god. My brain. It's almost 12 and it is not working, but we're almost done. Hanjin doesn't mention those things either, and in fact both Hanjin and Chino call Sanada by his real name, Nobushige. Yeah. Oh, Actually, yeah, that's a good point to bring up because in case people were not aware, Yukimura is his quote-unquote romanticized name. No, but in historical accounts, he's always referred to as Sanada Nobushige instead. So yeah, like there's a lot of reasons why he could be not mentioning those things, but then it's also like we have to wait quite a long time to get any confirmation because all of this will probably be cleared up in his Kiwame. Like Kiwame is all about like, you know, finding a reason, like finding what they're lacking in to train themselves to like overcome it. So a big question in how they will take his character is where are they gonna send him to Kiwame? Like, is it gonna be like, let's say, Imanotsurugi's Kiwame, which spoilers, he finds out he wasn't actually real. He was just kind of like a literary piece then as well. But he was like totally fine with it because like the point is he was talked about anyway, and by virtue of that he does in fact exist, even though it's kind of also existential dread sort of thing. So hopefully we don't have to wait too long to get a resolution to Ochi's personality, because I really do want to know more about him, because even compared to the composite swords, he's such a fascinating concept because a lot of the composites are based off the works of a single smith or like a smith group, while he is in fact closest to like Tomoe and Shizuka, who both, but like they're kind of better off in a way because they don't really want to cling to a specific story or anything, and also because in Shizuka's case he conflicts with Iwatoshi because by shape wise I know Iwatoshi would probably count as a Shizuka Gata, but because he's heavily influenced by the story of Benkei, he's able to exist on his own apart from also probably being fictional as well. So, and the thing with Nagasone and oh god, my brain, the thing with Nagasone being actually kind of a fake Kotetsu, but he is able to exist separately from Kiyomaru, which he is in fact like them. That's why he has a recollection with Kiyomaru. And I don't know, it would be actually I wish they did a recollection between Ochidori and Ningen Mokotsu, because Mokotsu is a Jumonji-ari himself. He's not an Ochidori, but he is a Jumonji-ari. So it would have been interesting to give them something to like discuss. Ganba. Yeah, I'm almost done. I also should wrap up soon so I don't keep you guys up too late or like away from like morning duties and the like. But yeah, I feel like it's a missed opportunity that Ochi didn't interact with the other spears as much, if at all. But I hope other the other mediums of Token Ranbu make up for it somehow. So that's it. So like, what do you guys think about Ochi before we move on to Ningen Mukotsu, which probably would be fairly short as well. Let's go UDC plus 8 people. Let's go. It's midnight here. So yeah, I don't know. Thank you so much, Kaze, for being here and like providing your own insight, because it really helps, because you do in fact have a better perspective on him than I do. Because yeah, I know you care him very much, and it would be good to get the opinion of someone who does care him lots. Ume voice sexy, correct. God, the releases for that year were such bangers, and I really am just fond of his like black undercut and white hair. The thing about around his neck, I didn't, because admittedly I don't really know what to say about it. But if you guys have something to share about it, please do feel free in the comments below. Let's see, do I have a picture of... Let's see if I have a picture of his sprite where it shows it off better. I do. Here. So before we move on to Ningen Mokotsu, like, does anyone want to share with the class what they know about his neck wrappings? If he released early, I would have latched onto him. That's an interesting thing to think about, like the what ifs of the other swords that would have been your main Oshi. 16-year-old self. Right, to me it's like he looks like one of the guys from Fruits Basket, doesn't he? His red camouflage uniform is really cool. Right. It's very, very trendy. The camo, I don't know. Like I can't say much about the camo, like, because it surely doesn't make him blend in anywhere. I do love the red camo. Yeah. Yes, Hatsuharu. Like the he's like the cow one, right? I didn't really get much into Fruits Basket, but I did see him a lot, like, because like the manga and stuff. I don't really know about like why he's wearing camo in particular. Like, I guess tactical because war and stuff, but then it kind of defeats the purpose because it's so visible. I guess they just wanted to put a spin on him where he doesn't have to wear like the big samurai armor that Nobushige was often portrayed with, which is an interesting take. But it's also fascinating how his gear is like very old and rusty and dilapidated almost, and how he keeps his shaft completely wrapped up in this cloth. Like, he definitely likes the red, but he keeps it covered up for some reason. And the idea that they're interlocking overlapping parts like the composites themselves. Oh, yeah, actually, that's sheesh. That is a very interesting way to put it. It could definitely make sense. Like, wow, brain expand. Camouflage is the unifying Sanada thing. Red for the family and camouflage before the mountain warfare. Right, okay. You were able to like piece together the thoughts I've been having, because it's like thinking, well, I guess the camo would relate to the mountain warfare, but then it's like a really loud color, so it doesn't really check out. Then you managed to fit them together in a very cohesive way. Thank you very much. And let's see, what else is there about him. Buddy, your one pants hem. You have frayed it from stepping all over it, buddy. Man. I guess we should move on from him for now. If he wants to talk about himself, he will. So hopefully he shall talk some more soon, and we can move on towards Ningen Mokotsu. He's the latest release, number 214 of the Kanesada School, drawn by Akira, who also drew Dodanuki, voiced by Yoshino Hiroyuki, which was one of my wish lists for seiyus, and I'm glad it came true. No height yet, but everyone agrees he seems to be the shortest guy around, which to me probably is because he's referencing the age of, like, Oni Musashi was 17 when the spear gained its name of Ningen Mokotsu, so maybe it's referencing that, like he's supposed to be just a little guy. He's barely got past his teens compared to everyone else, and he was forged around the 1500s by the swordsmith Nosada, the second Kanesada. The name comes from how it is said that the spear is able to cut through bodies with little to no resistance, as if there were no bones getting its way. So like it's literally boneless man, which is kind of funny because like what you called the thing boneless man, so it means like it kind of gives the impression like, oh, we're like in like the way we interpret it in English, it's like, so the spear is a man that's boneless rather than it referring to the things it stabs becoming boneless. So Mori Nagayoshi had eventually gotten the characters for human Ningen and boneless Mokotsu engraved on either side of the spearhead, which is in the illustration here. So like it's back and front, so that's Ningen on the forefront here and Mokotsu up back. And you can see a bit of like Kanesada signature on the tang here, which is usually covered by the shaft. It is also of the Jumonji Yari shape, but of a simpler, straighter form than Ochidori. Like, yeah, like as I mentioned, let's see if I can bring up I love a feral spear guy. I'm just a little guy, don't mind the claws. Big chihuahua energy. All of those are excellent answers. I think I have a picture of Ochi here. Oh no, I didn't. I don't think I saved one of his battle sprites. Dang it. But yeah, his spearhead is a lot simpler in shape than Ochi's, where it definitely looks like bird wings. His is like more flatter, as you can see in the illustration in the back. Actually, it might be on the next slide. Yeah. Yep, there we go. It's not a very clear photo, but like it says there, like he's under private ownership, so there's not a whole lot of photos of him, which I hope will change sometime soon. Because, you know, tourism is good, sharing culture is good. That includes getting better pictures of this guy. Like, when I was actually searching, I almost took a picture that someone said was Ningen Mokotsu, but then I realized it wasn't him. It was just another Jumonji Yari, mainly because you couldn't see the engravings on it, and it looked way too unkempt for compared to like this photo to be him. So I didn't take that one. Thankfully, I noticed. Ningen Mokotsu was owned by Mori Nagayoshi, the elder brother to Mori Ranmaru, who ended up owning Fudo Yukimitsu. That's why he has the recollection. He earned the nickname Oni Musashi from his ferocity and temper on the battlefield, which he... Where is my notes? Basically, there's this anecdote about how Nagayoshi at the age of 17 killed 27 enemies with his spear in a single fight, and whenever he would skewer them through the throat with it, and it got as far as like the cross section, like their heads would come off completely, which is very morbid and violent. And after his passing, at least I assume it's after his passing, because I couldn't find any accounts of the Sankin Kotai processions happening while he was alive. But Ningen Mokotsu was also used as an insignia at the front of the procession, so that's something he and Otegine have in common, which is pretty cool. As well as like the whole heads thing. Like, it's interesting how the guy we talk about like just being a normal dude has a lot in common with our little feral boy here. So yeah, the spear is currently in private ownership, but a replica can be found at the Ako Oishi Shrine in the Hyogo Prefecture, which is also where you can find statues of the 47 Ronin, which is pretty cool. So like if you go there, there's a lot of like historical stuff you can tackle. Fun Viking fact: there's a famous Viking leader named Ivar Ragnarsson, who also called Ivar or the Boneless. So his name stuck, but not the reason. That's very funny, because like you'd think with such an like unusual nickname they would remember why. Otegine to Ningen, who left a sassy child here. Oh my god. Otegine needs to invite him out for food so he can grow bigger. They need to have lunch and buffets together. So his history is like pretty short and concise, because like much like Tonbokiri, he stayed with mostly one owner, like one prominent one anyway. Like after Nagayoshi died, he passed hands around the Mori family, left the Mori family for a little bit, like passed around some private collectors, but that's like not the most important thing in relation to his character, so I just skipped all over those. Freeing from impotence, we reception of stories being flexible. He's also sounds like a very cool dude. I should look him up later, or you can tell him about him later. So reason that I don't know actually. Like I was hoping you guys wouldn't bring that up, because Kaze and I actually like discussed like what we thought of his weird stilted speech pattern, and I personally don't know, because when you listen to his voice lines, he speaks a bit slowly and deliberately, but it's not like it's stilted. So I don't know why they characterize it as if he was stuttering. I what do you call it? Like it's like he doesn't know where to put emphasis on his words, which I don't really know why he would do that. Bad handwriting, as you discussed. Yeah, yeah, like the handwriting is one thing, but then they they wrote his dialogue with like those weird, some parts or some syllables are capitalized when they shouldn't be. And see, Cats, if you're talking about Hakusan, it's still kind of a different case because Hakusan definitely speaks robotically, but like Ningen Mukotsu doesn't. He speaks normally. Like his speech pattern is pretty much the same. So like there wasn't, like, to me, like it feels like an odd choice to like translate that into his like speaking as well, since then why did Kassen manage to overcome it just because he was called related to poets? Is that it? From another media. Oh, I see. Like, which one was it? I wonder if it's like a kabuki mono thing. What do you mean? Like, could you like explain more on that thought? Because I'm also very interested why they would do that. Because I'm honestly at a loss. So, while you guys discuss that in chat, I'll discuss a little bit about him in canon and fandom. So, Ningen Mokotsu has not inherited not only his owner or partner, he calls Nagayoshi his aibo in the Japanese voice lines, violent fighting style, but also their interest in the arts such as tea ceremonies and poetry. So like, if you browse through Ningen Mokotsu's lines, he sometimes makes comments about like the tea sets you're using for Hanami and looking at tea set. I think he also looks at tea sets in the shop if you bring him as your attendant. Unfortunately for him, he also seems to have picked up his owner's reputation for having his smith's reputation for having poor handwriting, making the latter activity a bit more difficult to polish up on. Regardless, he puts in the time to practice, both in leisure and writing out reports to the Saniwa. For Sengo, it's because Sengo Sengo kind of uses slang somehow. Like he uses like wasei ego. No, not really wasei ego, but yeah, he doesn't have as much of a traditional or formal way of speaking off the top of my head. So there's that. Youngster sort of quirk because he has that emo energy sometimes, which that interpretation could be right, because like I mentioned, he probably reflects Nagayoshi's youth in relation to his naming. Yeah, that could work. Nice. I am enjoying this discussion very much. You can use a katakana to have a foreign weird tone to text. Yeah, that's right. And Chabuki Mono were known for doing weird things under rule of cool. Oh. Man, I'm really not familiar much with that, so I can't give further input, but it's all of this is like coming together nicely, and we're all, and like I said in the reminder, I really want to learn from what you guys think as well, because Tokanon was a sandbox. We have our own different interpretations, and they don't have to be necessarily incorrect in comparison to others, so it's great to pass them around. So yeah, like Ningen Mokotsu, like you'd think, like I thought it was very cute that he also wrote reports in order to practice his handwriting, reports in a diary. And that encounter with Kassen where he asks if Kassen had a hard time with writing too, and all Kassen says is like, well, if I admit defeat to that, then that wouldn't look very good to me, and he just goes off laughing. And like Mokotsu's like, well, that's what he said, so I'm taking it as like Ningen Mokotsu just assumes that Kazen just doesn't want to admit he also had bad handwriting at some point. Or that maybe his bad writing is actually still bad at present, we don't know that. And despite his wild behavior on the battlefield, he's actually an excellent communicator. So yeah, like what I mentioned before, the reason that the way they wrote his dialogue like that confuses me is because when you listen to the words he uses and the way he speaks to other people, he's not actually rude or brusque. He's actually like quite eloquent, the way with, especially with, it stands out the most with his recollection with Fudo when he brings Nagayoshi's message to Fudo, who he is referring to as taking the place of Ranmaru, where he basically said he wants to carry his partner's message on the tip of his cross-shaped spear, because he wants to carry it on his spear tip. He wants to send the message across to Fudo in place of Ranmaru, that all Nagayoshi ever thought about when he heard the news of what happened to his little brother was that he wished he could see them again. So that was very bittersweet, because especially since the recollection happens between Ningen Mokotsu and Fudo before his Kiwami, so Fudo wasn't really being a participant in the conversation. Ningen Mokotsu was just dialoguing about what he remembers of that time when Nagayoshi received the news with his mother, and how they were planning to have a vacation together as a family after the whole conquest that was going on at the time. But then of course they'll never get that anymore because Ranmaru was gone because of the siege and Honoji happened. And Fudo actually does end up crying because he was I don't want, he didn't want to listen to it or accept those words from Ningen Mokotsu, because he really just wanted to be left alone and be a drunk. But then he also thought if he didn't accept it, then that would make him even worthless as a sword. So as much as it pains him to think about his master and the sentiments of his master sibling, he accepts Ningen Mokotsu's message, which is, that was not something I expected from Touken Ranbu, within the recollections itself, because there's a lot of sad stories in the recollections, but I think this one's one of the saddest we have so far. Nagayoshi also lost 2 other younger brothers. Oh, I think that might be true. Of course, because Ranmaru being close to Nobunaga and all, he gets the most mention. But I think I've read something of the sort as well. So imagine losing your siblings all at once when you guys had plans for the summer to spend time together, and now you just have to live with the fact that's never gonna happen anymore. So the way that you guys know how all of the swords have trouble with dealing with grief and the whether it's towards the regrets for their master passing away or or the regrets of not being used. It's interesting to have Ningen Mokotsu handle it so well. He, even though Fudo didn't want to participate in the conversation, Fudo barely spoke in that recollection. He just listened to Mokotsu monologue. He was able to tell the story so well to the point that it even moved Fudo and even the viewers, honestly. So it's you wouldn't expect that from his wild side. And even when he was discussing with Izumi no Kami, Kane-san was calling him senpai because he's the older one. They were so generous with the Mokotsu recollection. Right. I don't know. I didn't expect that at all, because they're kind of stingy with it most times with most swords. But the fact that he got 4 and all of them are so good. So there is him with Kane-san and him just going, "Oh, you wanna call me senpai? Well, I guess that's fine and it makes sense. And what do you want me to call you?" Then of course Kane-san gets all sheepish and was don't come on, don't make me say that I want you to call me Kohai. Then it turns out Mokotsu was just asking just in case, but he really did plan on calling him that anyway. And it was just a very wholesome interaction, and he didn't even reject the notion, alright, that works. And then his little almost fanboyish interaction with Iwatoshi, where he says they're alike because their masters were known as Oni, are like ogres because uh because Nagayoshi was known as Oni Musashi, and Benkei is, he was said to be an ogre for his like so-called size and for being quote-unquote monstrous in appearance. And then Iwatoshi was like, oh yeah, like if someone like him was called an Oni in the later years, then maybe he would have also contributed to making sure that that Benkei's stories lived on. And they did end up like considering each other comrades in arms. And they even said, with the two of us here, then we were basically unstoppable. Like it's so wholesome that like you wouldn't expect that from Ningen Makoto to have such wholesome interactions where he just makes friends. He like reunites with Fudo in place of their master. His relationship with Kane-san and Kasen. So it's like they really like played well into his brotherly side and his like more artistic and calm side outside of fighting, even though he does in fact like scream a lot and definitely revels in the battles when he has to. According to your notes, Mori Ranmaru, Bomaru, and Rikimaru died at Honoji, along with retinue of young boys. Man, that's 3 siblings in a night. That's awful news to get. Man. So, yeah, that's pretty much Ningen Makoto. Like, if once again we go back to the whole like the way they handled him and Tonbokiri, like they could have just gone for like, oh, they like fighting, they're really good at it, and they really dedicate themselves to the cause. But then they added like this extra dimension of them having a gentler side to them, so it just highlights that warmongering side so much better as well. So we're pretty much at the end of my PowerPoint, but I'll talk about it a little. Like I'll let you guys like talk in the chat a bit more, because like after this, then we'll finally be at the end of the stream. Which, thank you so much for being here for over 2.5 hours, or rather nearly 2.5 hours, considering we didn't really stop for breaks either. Makoto's Gap Moe is between an absolute gremlin and a complete sweetheart. Absolutely. That's why he like shot up so fast in my favorites. Like, I love you. You are the size of a chihuahua and bark like a chihuahua, but you're also like very affectionate. And it's like, it's not even like a puppy affectionate. He really does feel like an older brother when you talk to him. Feral and angry on the battlefield. Outside, he is rather troubled and doesn't really know how to emote, therefore his speech pattern. I suppose that's true, because like if you look, like now that I think about it, if you look at his attendance stuff, he knows what he wants to do, but he does kind of like just state it, like just like, oh well, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. It's not quite as robotic as Hakusan, but it's definitely a thing. Yeah. Okay, everything's starting to make a lot more sense. I'm so glad to be talking to you guys about these. So yeah, we're at the end of the stream at this point. So let me just give my closing remarks about the stream. Even with only 5 spears so far, I think we can all agree that they're all quite varied and have their own special, unique stories. And even in terms of like their shape and design, they're all quite unique from one another. And there's still a lot more that we might come to expect in games such as Kato Kiyomasa's spears, the Iwatsuki no Yari, which the name of the owner of this spear escapes me, but basically it's named after how its owner pierced through an enemy chest through their armor and even all the way to a rock behind them. So it's kind of like it's kind of similar to Ishikirimaru. So Ishi if he was a spear almost. Or even the mythical Ameno no Hoko and Ameno Sakahoko, which is very intertwined with Japanese creation myths with the Shinto mythology, if I remember correctly. But it's also interesting because these two, even if though their naming it makes them described as a spear, they are also often depicted as naginata. So if they do get in the game, it would be very interesting how Token Ranbu tackles that fact. Thank you so much for the stream. It was so fun. I have a better grasp on all their characters. Thanks to all of you. Yeah, thank you so much for participating too, Sea Cats. Like, I really appreciate having you guys to hang out here with me, even if you're just listening, having me on the background as you do other stuff. It means a lot to me that you guys let me talk this much about spears and the like. So, I'm definitely looking forward to at least one more spear in game, so we can have like a full team of 6 to play with. I just really like spears. I think they're very cool. So, and I'm very glad to have been able to share my love of these spears with you guys as well. Yari love, yay! Thank you for dropping by. Because seriously, this stream would not be as fun if you guys weren't here with me. So do pat yourselves on the back, give each other high fives, because really the fun we had is everyone's collective effort. I'm just here, like I kind of like just hosted it, but without you guys it would not, I would have probably like paused in the middle of it because I would have no one to talk to. But here I just kept going and going, and I honestly should have taken a drink of water by now, but it's okay. My voice is starting to give out, but I had so much fun with you guys. Thank you for bearing with my ramblings and my theories and me forgetting the names of some swords because it's like past midnight now, but I don't feel tired at all. I'm just so very happy to be here. I didn't notice the time flying by. Right. Like I didn't notice it either. Like I think the only thing that was making me pay attention was my throat at this point. Yeah, it's so nice to have you regularly drop by whenever you can, Hime. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Suzu. Thank you, Mono. Thank you, Kokorota. Thank you, Kairin. Thank you, Sea Cats. So, like, that's pretty much it for now. I'll have to, like, let you guys be now. Oh, wait, actually, before I leave, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do this yet, because I might be busy starting very soon, but if I can, I might schedule a stream on my anniversary, which is April 15. And if this pushes through, what I plan for it is like a better like the iceberg thing. You guys remember how I had the poll for whether I should do iceberg or what the hell is Token Ranbu stream? I might do the what the hell is Token Ranbu stream on my anniversary, but that would depend on my schedule and if I could actually get the outline going for that, because that's going to be so long. I don't know how long the discussion for that might take, so you know, that's something to look forward to. I'll make announcements of the schedule if it gets finalized. If not, you'll see it when it happens. And if you guys have any suggestions of other shorter, easier to talk about topics than the entirety of Token Ranbu that you'd like to discuss with me here, like just give me a shout in Twitter or just anywhere. Just like go, hey, I like just, or like maybe you guys would want to stream. If you guys want to stream, I would definitely want to tag along. Just yeah, I really enjoy hanging out with everyone because this is swamp nice. Let me talk nonsense for almost 3 hours straight again. If you don't do it, then I would be down to watch it whenever done. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me because it's something I've been thinking of for a very long time, but then it's also such a huge undertaking. I don't honestly know where to start half the time, even though I also have like the Token Ranbu lore doc, which I also haven't updated in years, even though I really should. Advanced celebration of anniversary April 20. Oh, actually, yeah. Like, if I can't do it on my anniversary, I could move it to that. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mona, for pointing that out. Like, maybe it doesn't have to be too long until then. But yeah, that's my next plan for sometime soon. And once again, thank you so much. This has been Nona Kh'nvinien, bringing you some spear loving for 2 hours and a half. I hope everyone has a good evening or a good day or afternoon. Like, go eat some food, go lie down, stretch, drink water. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again soon, okay? Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye everyone. Now if I can only find the button for ending broadcast. Bye bye.